Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
The product launch. Now, you may or may not be familiar with that term, product launch. But you're going to find out what it is today and possibly even expand your definition of product launch if you are familiar with it. But I want you to stand back and think about that term for a minute. It sounds kind of violent, doesn't it? Product launch, like rocket launch, missile launch. The product launch. Like, it's coming at you fast. It's coming at you furious. And it's going to make a big impact. And that's really what it is people that develop products, they develop services. They may be new products or services. They may be products and services that they're revitalizing. They may be products and services that need a boost. And the product launch can do some pretty remarkable things if it's done correctly. But the problem is there's some people that, one, don't know what a product launch is. If that's you, like I said, stick around. You'll find that out. There's other people that have some misconceptions about product launches and what you can use them for. And there are people that just flat out doing it wrong because they are trying to cast a big net, a wide net. And even though that may seem like the best and smartest thing to do, it actually could be detrimental to your success of your product launch. So if you have a product or service, if you're an entrepreneur and you think the way to sell something online, and I also want to make sure that the product launches are not just for online; they can be for offline, brick and mortar, which is something that I hadn't really considered too much until I spoke to our guest today, who is a product launch expert. He is really, considered one of the go-to guys in a lot of different industries. A lot of people associate the product launch with internet marketing or info products, but it really does have a much wider application, a much wider appeal, and it's something that really does have a lot of moving pieces that people don't realize, but it can be extremely valuable, extremely profitable to building a new product or service, or getting a product or service that may have lost its luster or seems to be growing stagnant, to give it a new shot in the arm. So stick around, because we're going to be back with product launch expert James Klobasa, and he is going to open your eyes about what a product launch can do. We'll be right back.
Don't miss a thing. Listen to and download past episodes, get show notes, resource lists, and leave feedback at influencersradio.com.
And we are back with Influencers Radio. And today's guest is James Klobasa. He is a product launch manager, and not just a product launch manager. He's a product launch mentor, in my book, because of the way, and that's what makes him an influencer. And when we talk about product launches, we're not just talking about, a lot of the things that people think about, info products training, although a lot of that is incorporated, but we're talking about, from industries, from real estate, health and wellness, financial, social media, B2B, if people that are coaches, consultants, in education, even things that you don't typically think about, using the product launch to grow the business, like offline or brick and mortar type businesses like construction, which is really interesting to me. And I want to hear more about, how some of that works. And I think you're going to learn a lot about the product launch process, and probably a lot of stuff that you didn't realize goes on with product launches. James, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, g'day, Jack. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Well, I want to get right to the point and the definition for those that don't know, and actually a lot of people do have their own definition or their own thought about what product launch means. And it really depends on what industry they're in. I'm going to let you start off with what your definition, the parameters that we're talking about product launch and product launch management today.
Yeah, okay. Look, taking someone through a product launch for me is really about, getting to know your market on a really intimate level, finding out what they're after, and presenting that as sort of a, maybe in a curious manner or in a shock and awe type manner so that they sit up and take notice, showing them the opportunity at hand, and then showing them the transformation that can happen if you do take that opportunity, and then explaining the sort of ownership side of it, what will happen to them when they, take that opportunity up. And then, of course, presenting them with an irresistible offer. So just quickly, that's probably the quick product launch path that you take people on to move them through to a nice result.
Right. And it's a part of marketing, right? Creating that offer, the copywriting. And that's the one thing you get into a lot of it. A lot of people think of product launches. They think of the little elements of product launch. There's step A, step 1, step 2, step 3. And there's really a lot of variables in there. But one of the things I want you to kind of go a little deeper is that product launch doesn't necessarily mean product, whether physical or virtual. It could also be a service with all these different industries that you've worked in. What kind of latitude are you talking about between a product, a physical product, a virtual product, or even a service? And I know you even talked about how some people do product launches, for brand recognition.
Yeah, it really goes across the board from digital products, coaches, consultants, you mentioned all of that. One of the stranger ones that I've done is for brand awareness in the construction industry. And, we kicked off a company that was in the concrete scanning market. And I don't know if you know that one, but if you were out to drill a hole in a piece of concrete, there's little guys that come along and scan the concrete to make sure you don't hit anything. And, we kicked off that business really just telling the story of, what's the opportunity out there. And really, on their side, it was what's the bad opportunity if it all goes wrong and you actually hit something nasty. And just telling the transformation of, what had happened in the past to other companies, the experiences they'd been through, going down the wrong path. And then, presenting an irresistible offer, we were able to build a brand new company to on a local level really quickly, and then to a national level within a couple of months. So really massive growth and that was in the Australian market. But it really telling that story across across an obscure market, for want of a better word, I would call that obscure. It's not IM, it's not, in the digital market, worked really successfully. And it's mainly because these tactics aren't really being used in that market. Everyone knows about it from the IM market, but offline, businesses and sort of out of the way businesses, off the grid, you could say, they're the markets that really take off using a product launch. And, of course, I still do launches in the general markets, as far as, not so much IM, but the digital markets and consulting, that sort of thing. But it's the obscure markets that really get massive rewards on these as well.
Now, James, I'm going to say what everybody listening is thinking. Sure, a product launch will work in the concrete scanning. That's got to be second to golf in a rabid, passionate following, right?
Well, I'll leave that up to their imagination, Jack. But it's one thing. I'm a big believer of if you get a hold of something that really works, just use it, really use it, put it to work. I've done a lot of launches now over the 5 years I've been a launch manager, and it's never failed me. And this is a really interesting thing. Like, not many people, people think, oh, I've got to do my product launch, and that might be costly, or I can't get it right. There's so many moving pieces. But you can do a really simple product launch. They don't have to be big and go out to 1 million people. You can do a really simple, quick product launch. They can be put together easily, and the results just grow on top of each other. They have this momentum that pushes them along. So it's something that everyone can do.
Well, I think, of course, I was being facetious with the concrete scanning, but I don't think you could have picked a better example to put a spotlight on the fact that this works in areas and industries and verticals that people just couldn't imagine. Because there's probably people out there that they're thinking, well, this probably wouldn't work in my market or work in my vertical. But I've also seen firsthand how this works even on a local basis. You talked about the company that you started out as local, but then it grew national. But I've seen product launches work locally, especially in the real estate market and services like that, health and wellness. Clearly, when companies say, fitness boot camps or something like that are starting locally. And you're right, it's something that is just not seen. If you've been paying attention to internet marketing, you may be a little bit jaded or have blinders on around product launches. But to me, you have a crystal ball. Like, you're still years ahead of the general person that you might meet down at the grocery store to having any clue to what a product launch is. And that effect on them could be huge psychologically. And it sounds like you work on that. You don't just work on the mechanics, but you work on the message and actually fine tuning who the market is that your clients and the people that you are working with are targeting. Do you find that is like one of the most neglected possibly areas that people spend when they're doing a product launch is defining who it is they're trying to sell this to?
Yeah, most definitely, Jack. The big problem out in the marketplace is everyone's trying to serve everyone instead of being particular. And just, the perfect example, I've been working on a large project in the meditation space, and they came to us with an idea that their market was, sort of the 35 to 60-year-old. Now, a 35-year-old's a lot different to a 60-year-old. After, doing some work, doing some homework, doing some research and surveys, all part of the sort of product launch process that we go through, we found out that their ideal client was a female at 44 years old. Now, knowing that, we're able to tailor our marketing, tailor our delivery of product, and tailor our language that we use throughout the whole launch process specifically to that 44-year-old female. Now, everyone says, oh, but if I cut out everyone else, then I'm going to miss out on a lot. Well, the fact is that there are a lot of 44-year-old females in the world, and going out on a global scale, it's a huge market. So people always get caught, trying to please everyone, and they end up pleasing no one.
I find that to be very common, and I guess that's, the way your brain works logically is, well, wouldn't it be better to cast a wide net, get in front of as many people as possible and different types of people. But from what you've seen, targeting it and even, targeting a fraction of that total market, you've seen bigger returns and bigger results from doing that and neglecting a lot of what people think they need to be going after. Is that what you're saying, that you actually see higher profits by targeting less people?
Yeah, most definitely. And especially as you move up the chain and offer, higher end products or more, more specific products. In our circumstance, the market told us what they wanted, how they wanted it delivered, more or less when they wanted it and what they want to be told. We don't need to think too much if we actually do the work and do the homework. The monetary rewards just by building a really tight-knit community, are massive, and we don't need everyone. We just need the ideal client.
Well, let me talk about this, and that makes complete sense. And I think when people get their head around that, they'll realize that, you know, the tighter in they do, the more specific and targeted they're going to be able to speak to that person. What about cost of a product launch? I mean, just when you hear the word product launch, you think, well, okay, this is going to be a bit of a risk. You know, I'm going to put up this money and cross my fingers and hope that it pays off. You know, what are some common obstacles that you see around that, or maybe some misconceptions that people have around that?
I guess the biggest one there is people don't see it as an investment in their business. And product launches can be a little bit costly, but any good product launch manager or product launch mentor really shouldn't be taking on a client that they can't see a return for. You know, all of my clients have either had 5 to 10 to, you know, multiples of that, like in return, so return on investment. I personally don't take on a client unless I can easily see a 5 times return. So, you know, that's kind of, you've got to look at it in the right way as far as this is an investment in your business, not just a cost. It's not just a spending. You know, this sets you up. And this is one of the things that I didn't mention earlier, is that the momentum built from doing launches and doing from like one to the next, the momentum's huge. Now, I normally take on sort of clients over a year-long period where we can get 3 launches in, and the momentum built over that time is incredible. You know, I've taken people from literally zero online to $1 million online in just 3 launches. So it's an investment, and then people need to look at it that way.
Of course. And when you talk about 0 to $1 million, you can look at that one of two ways. You can look at that bill that you spent on your product launch and say, look where that money went. Or you can look at that bill and then look at your $1 million revenue and say, look where all that money came from. And I think that's the big difference. And I think the mindset is that, you know, when people invest in something like a product launch, you can't think of that as here's where expense, there's where my money's going. You have to look at it, man, look where my revenue for this year is going to come from. And I think that's a big difference. And I think that's probably the difference between folks that are, you know, successful in this business and the type of people that, you know, use product launches is a lot of them, they come built in with that success mentality and understand, that that's the power of a product launch. Because I think that's the one thing that you just can't debate is the power of a product launch versus putting up a website and a buy button and then going out and trying to build organic traffic to it. Right. I mean, that's a dramatic difference, yeah. I would imagine.
Yeah. And it's, you know, most people think about a product launch just as one single launch. Like personally, if a client comes to me, I'm thinking 3, 5, 10 years ahead. You know, because a good launch will set your business up for life, and it really kickstarts it. So I'm never thinking about just one launch. It's I think that's just that kind of goes back to that small mentality of what's it going to cost me, instead of what's my investment and where am I headed with this. You know, always got to be looking at the bigger picture. You know, how it's going to set you up for, you know, joint venture relationships or partners in the future. You know, your list building. There's so many different things to look at on the bigger end of the spectrum, rather than just a one-off launch where it's going to cost you money.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing, James, what I really like to do is you clearly are influencing folks and influencing their business and their bottom line with the work that you do with your clients and the mentoring that you do. What I like to find out is what is influencing the influencer. What is it that influences you, inspires you to do what you do, and finds its way into your service and your product launch management business?
Yeah, Jack. Well, I guess really, you know, I'm a fairly casual guy, so I actually like to get out of the office and get inspired. So I do travel a lot. I get to the beach, I surf a bit. That's probably my thing that takes my head out of the whole business and gets me fresh enough to actually dig into it. But, when I'm digging in, I probably like things, there's Dean Jackson and Joe Polish's podcast, I Love Marketing. That's a good one. And I'll read the occasional business book, but a classic is the old Think and Grow Rich. I always flick through that probably once a year and just, refresh the mind. But for me, it's more about getting out of the business than getting stuck deep inside the business. I've always got a business book close by, but I find getting out and actually, sharpening the saw up in the surf and in the ocean is what works best for me.
Well, you can't argue with success. I find that very common in a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that I talk to and that I work with. So definitely a great recipe there. So if folks want to find out more, because I'm sure we've opened up the eyes of folks of what product launches and who the opportunity is available to, how can folks find out more about what you are up to and learn more about your product launch strategies and services?
Thanks, Jack. They can head across to just jamesklobasa.com. I've got some information there for them. They can sign in if they want to take the next step and say good day to me. I love talking to anyone, and there's no hard sell on the page or anything like that. I always have a conversation and see if I can get them that return that they're after, and if there's an opportunity for us to work together, that's great.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I tell you, I have certainly loved speaking with you today and going deeper and seeing, kind of an expanded view of the product launch. So I do thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you, Jack. It's been a pleasure, mate. Good fun.
All right. Well, fantastic. Folks, there you have it. Go visit jamesklobasa.com. That's James and KLOBASA.com. And learn how not only James is influencing folks, but how doing a product launch, you're able to get your valuable information, your valuable products, your valuable services out there to a lot of folks at one time and become that influencer yourself. So remember, you are the only real game changer. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.